Hello y'all and welcome to YoungFolkKnits. Today we're going to chat all about newly released knitting patterns in January. Hello y'all and welcome back to YoungFolkKnits. If you're new here, my name is Casey and this is a channel where I share all about my love of fiber arts. Knitting, spinning, sewing, crochet, or whatever else we might be getting up to at the moment. And I also occasionally share about living on a small farm here in Arkansas. So if any of that sounds like it might be your cup of tea, make sure and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on any future video content. Today we're going to be chatting about brand new patterns that were released just this month, January 2025. Each month I like to go through Ravelry and look at all of the newly released patterns and pick out some of my favorites that are really giving me inspiration, a few from well-known designers and hopefully a few from hidden gems as well. A few very well-known designers like Andrea Mowry and Sari Nordland released a couple of new patterns. First off, from Andrea Mowry, we have the Moon Mint sweater. This is a fingering weight sweater, which I actually did test. She used the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Confluence cotton for her sample, and I find that yarn to be a little bit more of a heavy fingering weight, so you're definitely not going to get the same gauge with the recommended needles as you would a light fingering like knitting for olive merino. There's a big difference between those two yarn weights. The Confluence cotton yarn is a mixture of merino and cotton. Oh, I lie, it's not merino. It is 40% targi, 40% rambouillet, and 20% cotton. So those are all lovely fibers. I find targi and rambouillet to be extremely soft, very bouncy, and the cotton's going to give it even more breathability. I did, however, choose to use the Sonder Luxe Sport, which is a mix between BFL, Masham, and cashmere, and it is a 3-ply, I believe, so it's this beautifully round, smooth, bouncy, very soft yarn. And even though it's a sport weight and the pattern calls for a fingering weight, that is just to show you that I was absolutely able to reach gauge, and I feel like you have a little bit of wiggle room. You just may have to adjust your needle size to get the correct gauge, whether you go light fingering, sport weight. That's giving you a lot of different options. Moon Mint is a mosaic pattern. It's got an all over textured stitch pattern. It is a drop shoulder bottom up, so not my favorite construction. As you all know, I am a huge fan of top down. Bottom up is a little bit harder for me to fit correctly, but I've knit enough bottom up sweaters that I've kind of gotten some numbers that I know work for me, and that comes in handy as long as I know exactly how long my shoulder opening, my armhole is going to be. Then I know exactly how long I want to knit my body. That armhole depth is a big deal though, and it is massively going to affect where your sweater ends. And when you're knitting top down, you immediately know that. When you're knitting bottom up, if your gauge gets off at all, it's going to change things. So that's why I really do prefer to knit top down, but when a beautiful pattern like this comes around, it is worth it to knit the bottom up. The sleeves on it are straight, so there's no decreases, and they're actually meant to be bracelet length, so they're a little bit shorter than normal. And she's done this on a couple of patterns recently, like her Rhinebeck sweater, which was the framed sweater. She actually did the bracelet length sleeves as well, straight, no decreases. So I think they're having a moment with her, and I actually really liked how they turned out on this sweater. Another big name designer, Sari Nordland, released her Vivi Pullover. So this is a DK weight gauge, and it has some really beautiful cables on it. It has quite a few different cables, and I like the fact that they're separated into these different panels that almost give the look of ribbing between each cable pattern. But actually, there's just some small cables, some big cables, and again, this is drop shoulder, folded collar, 21 stitch gauge. recommended on a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needle. Sari used one of her go-tos, Knitting for Olive Merino, which is a light fingering weight held with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. For me, I have trouble getting gauge with a DK sometimes. Occasionally with that combo, I actually need to go down to a sport weight. But if you are not a loose knitter like me, then you probably will not have problem with that combo and getting the gauge you need to. This has great sizing options, sizes 1 through 9, so there's not large leaps between each size, and I like that. I always appreciate that. It makes it easier to get the exact fit that I want. I love a good drop shoulder cabled pattern, and I think the color she chose is just so classic, so Sari, and I absolutely love that nutty brown color. I think it works really nicely with so many different colored trousers. You could do olive green, you can do brown, you can do black. There's just a lot of different options to create outfits. I think this would be really lovely in the Sandnes Garn double Sunday or Sunday held double. Many people actually prefer the Sandnes Garn Sunday yarn to the double Sunday. They're both the same thing, just different weights. One's a fingering, one is a DK weight. And because of the way it's plied, people tend to prefer the Sunday. So I think that it would be really nice with the Sunday held double. I think that Peer Gynt might be a little thick for this, so you definitely have to check your gauge, but I think that could also be a nice option as well. I think another great option would be Knitting for Olive Merino, so the light fingering held double. I think I could definitely hit gauge with that as well. Another very well-known designer, which is My Favorite Things Knitwear, released 2 new patterns. One is the sweater number 30. So this is a worsted weight gauge, 18 stitches, and it is just a very classic pullover. It's got a big turtleneck. It was definitely designed to have the oversized fit, the high collar, and it has saddle shoulders. So not your typical drop shoulder, but a really nice little detail there for the saddle shoulders. It has a bust circumference which ranges from 42.5 inches to 60.75 inches. Brown is absolutely having a moment, and My Favorite Things Knitwear is taking advantage of it because they also released the new Norma. The Norma was previously a pattern with this exact same colorwork chart, but instead it was a raglan. And I do actually have one of those on my needles somewhere. But this one is a new take on that. So they use the same colorwork chart, but instead this is a drop shoulder. And it is knit top down. Thank goodness, I hate bottom up. But I am assuming that since it is drop shoulder, you will be working colorwork flat. This is not a really difficult colorwork pattern. There's only a few rows where 1x1 colorwork is actually even worked. So I would not consider that to be difficult. It's definitely designed with a lot of positive ease, and it is knit at an Aran weight gauge, so 15 stitch gauge. That is very fluffy, and the sample was designed with Sonder Yarn Spinny and Sonder Yarn Soft Fine. So I think that a nice substitute for that would be Drops Air. I love Drops Air. I've made multiple sweaters with Drops Air. It's so affordable and it's so soft. It's just light and lovely. I think another great option would be Sandnes Garn Kos, or Kos, however that's pronounced. As well as Diamond Lane Big Birdie, which is from the Lamb and Kid. I think that would be really lovely as well. Next up, we have a really fun sweater, which was released by my girl Samantha Guerin. I absolutely love everything that she creates. So this design was actually first released from her as a collar or a dickie, and it was the coffee run collar. I have made one of those and I love it. So this time she went back and used the texture for a pullover. I did actually test this, but unfortunately I was not able to finish because life happened, but I love it and I will finish it. So Samantha used a DK weight gauge. She used the Sonder Yarn Sunday Morning Luxe Sport, which I have just talked about how much I loved, and she held it with the Sonder Yarn Halo, which is their mohair base, their lace weight base. So I was actually using the Sonder Sunday Morning DK, which is a BFL and Massa mix, and it blooms so beautifully. It's a lovely 2-ply, and because of that, I'm able to easily get a worsted weight gauge at times with this. So this is a 19 stitch gauge. Absolutely have no problem getting that on the DK. This has beautiful simple texture, but it gives the sweater some visual interest, which I really, really love. And as always, Samantha does a great job of size inclusivity. And I really like the fact, as always, that this is a top-down pattern. It has some nice positive ease, but it's not, you know, wildly huge. Sometimes I get tired of everything being just, I don't know, 20 inches of positive ease. It's just not always my vibe. You can make anything to the ease that you want, but I like that this sweater is well fitting. It does have some positive ease, but it fits well, and I like that. Drop shoulders are my favorite fit, so yes, I'm a huge fan of the Coffee Date sweater. I love the Coffee Date sweater so much that I would actually love to give a copy of the pattern to one of you lovely viewers. Just let me know in the comments that you're interested in winning it, and if you've already purchased the Coffee Date pattern, then I will give you another one of the patterns that I've mentioned today instead. I'll let you choose. Next up, we have a pattern from Laura Penrose, and this is the Midland Cardigan. So we've got 1 through 10 sizes available, which I think is fabulous. And the construction of this is really interesting because it's actually knit sideways. It starts on the right side, you knit it across, and then you cast on for the body and armhole. You've got shoulder shaping, you're going to then knit your ribbing, and I like the way that the garter looks on its side. I think that looks really nice. I also think that garter is going to knit up so quickly. You're knitting it flat, so great way to use texture and get a very easy knit out of it. This is a DK weight yarn. She used Woolly Mammoth Fibre Company Hearth DK, which I actually have some. Absolutely love the yarn. It is a lovely woolly rustic yarn, which is naturally dyed, so I think that's always a little bit something special to add to it. And it's an 18 stitch gauge, which I find to be a very nice fabric with a DK weight. Next up, we have a pattern from Caitlin Hunter, who is Boyland Knitworks, and it is the Winter Albina sweater. So this is one of those really fun drop shoulder, very classic striped sweaters. Lots of positive ease, and in fact, it reminds me of a few different Sandnes Garn sweaters that I have seen. I really, really like this pattern a lot. I love the positive ease, worsted weight gauge, 18 stitch gauge. I love a striped turtleneck. Drop shoulder striped turtleneck is one of my all-time favorites. This is just such a classic. I love, love, love the colors. I think that makes it so much more classic and a forever piece. And I think it's really cool how at the very bottom there's that single contrast color stripe, which gives it a lot of interest and adds a little bit of elevation to the style. Next up, I want to share a couple of vests that I think turned out absolutely gorgeous. The first one is the Cragmore Vest. This was designed by Beth McDonald Stone, and it's a beautiful DK weight, all over textured cabled vest. So it is top down, drop shoulder, which you will then work in the round, and it looks like it has a great size range as well as different options. For instance, there's the option to add a ribbing to the vest. There's an option for a more lower profile finish for the armholes, which does affect how far they go down the arms. So that is nice, and it is also on sale for 20% off. Mia from Skeins of Dreams did actually test knit this, and she had a great experience with the pattern as well as her finished object. It looks absolutely beautiful. It fits beautifully, and so I think a DK weight cabled vest you just cannot go wrong with. It's truly beautiful. Another one that I fell in love with is the Polina Vest, which is a pattern by Teti Lutzak. She is one of my all-time favorite designers, and this motif has been used in a pullover, socks, the vest, possibly another sweater as well. but it is a beautiful flower motif, 2-color color work. So this uses DK weight yarn and a nice 20-stitch gauge. I think that the colors she always chooses are so beautiful and natural. So this is an A-line bottom up funnel neck, and you know, bottom up again, but I like the fact that you're getting your color work in immediately, and then the yoke of the sweater is going to be knit with no color work, which is really nice. It's going to be just a nice stockinette. I always love the way that she does her necks. I really like the funnel neck. I think this just absolutely captures the cottagecore look in a very chic sort of way. One more vest I want to share is the Vibe Check Vest. This is by Ketchup Knits, and it is just super cute. It's a super bulky pattern. It uses Lion Brand Woolies Thick and Quick Solids, which are pretty available everywhere in the US. They're easy to get a hold of. So I think it would be a pretty quick knit. It looks like it's probably intarsia. Yes, it is intarsia and it is bottom up, but that super bulky 8-stitch gauge is gonna make this an incredibly fast knit. Intarsia is definitely not a big deal. There's not a lot of colors here. You just need to make a few bobbins up and wrap your work and away you go on the knitting. So I think this would be really cute in that classic black and white. I really love it. It gives very much 60s mod vibes. Next up is the Ahto Cardigan, which is by Ronya Hakaleto. I know I did not pronounce that correctly. I am going to ask some friends who speak the language natively, and hopefully they will help me for next time. I do apologize. But this is a absolutely beautiful DK weight cardigan. I think it is just stunning. It's top down. I love the colors that she always creates with. I love the buttons. This has a really nice size range with a bust circumference from 40.25 inches up to 69.75 inches. It is designed to have positive ease. And I just think there's nothing more classic than a half fisherman's rib cardigan. It's cozy, it's squishy, it's beautiful. It has that rustic classic look that will always be in style. I love the pockets. I love everything about this. I would absolutely love to knit this at some point soon. I am all about cardigans right now, and so I just need to add this to my list. A sock pattern I fell in love with is the Wigget Socks, which is by Nancy Wheeler. Nancy Wheeler is a sock pattern queen. I love all of her sock patterns. This pattern says that it was inspired by a fun friends weekend in a historic house in the south of England. So I like this simple use of texture along the side. You're still getting a lot of stockinette, so these socks are going to knit up quickly, and there's not texture on the bottom of the foot, which I'm not a fan of, but instead you just have some nice texture along the side to give some visual interest and also to make it fun while you're knitting. I always like just a little bit to keep my interest, to keep me engaged in the knit. This is just your classic fingering weight sock yarn gauge, and it does have multiple sizes. Great way to use up sock yarn. You can use contrast colors for the toes and heels. I am currently doing a sock a month, which is my goal. I'm not putting too much stock in it because I get very busy with different obligations as far as my knitting goes. So it probably won't happen, but I am trying to do a sock a month, and that would give me full 6 pairs at the end of the year. I was very kindly gifted the Colorwork Cuff Club by one of you lovely viewers, and I am a big fan of Summerly Knits sock patterns, so I've been doing one of those right now this month along with some other knitting pals, and it's a lot of fun. I signed up for the Little Fox Yarn monthly sock club, and that's my goal, is to get quite a few pair of socks by the end of the year. As always, I am going to link the bundle on Ravelry, which has all these patterns plus a few more I just ran out of time and wasn't able to cover. But there's quite a few lovely newly released patterns in the bundle, which you can find in the description. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure and give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on any future video content. Also, don't forget, I would love to gift one of you a copy of the Coffee Date sweater pattern. Make sure and comment below, that way you'll be entered to win. If you already have the pattern, then you can feel free to pick a different one that I mentioned today instead. Until next time, happy knitting, y'all.